Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mike Norvell, Florida State landing their second four-star commitment in the last 24 hours. This one in the 2026 class from four-star running back Amari Clemons from the state of Florida. Now, the first thing that pops up when you start diving into Amari Clemons, lack of better terms, the absolute video game numbers that this kid put up during his junior year of high school football. 153 carries for 1,800 yards. That is averaging 12.3 yards per carry, 34 touchdowns. He scored a touchdown on just about 20% of his carries during his junior year. Good things happen when this kid has the football in his hands. And I mean this with all due respect to Amari Clemons. This is a massive positive when you talk about running backs. I don't know if he is elite at one thing, but he's so damn solid at everything. And you turn on his film and say that there's not many things that you look at and say, yeah, that's a problem that needs to get cleaned up. And why I think that's such a positive is, look, a lot of the other running backs that we evaluate coming out of high school, they might be good at one thing. They might have just burners when they get to the second level, but don't deal with contact all that well. They might deal with contact really well, but kind of lack that gear when they get to the second level. You look at Amari Clemons and say, look, deals with contact exceptionally well, nice feel at the running back position, has that. I don't know if it's an elite gear in terms of long speed, but you don't really see him get caught from behind very often from defensive backs. There's not really a hole in this kid's game, and that matters when you're taking running backs out of high school. I like this. And if you are Florida State going into this Gus Malzahn offense, we're going to run the rock. We got to make sure we got a deep and talented stable of running backs over the next couple of years. Amari Clemons, certainly one of those guys. Want to get a little bit into the film, want to talk a little bit about what Florida State has done on the high school recruiting trail. Look, this staff for Florida State, the new additions, Tony White, Knighton, Herb Hand, Gus Malzahn, they haven't been here all that long. You are seeing the effects of adding this staff on the recruiting trail. This program seems to be operating better and kind of maximizing the pull that Florida State has on the recruiting trail, which matters and was one of the biggest knocks on Mike Norvell's staff going back to the last couple of years, where you look at Florida State, all the success they're having on the football field, and it never really seemed like the recruiting success followed. Can this staff maximize what Florida State can be on the recruiting trail? That's what we're kind of looking for. In the early returns that we're seeing, I think are very positive. Want to get into Amari Clemons before we do, and as always, the Florida State fans. One, thank you to you guys. The Florida State fans, a lot of y'all rock with the fellas in the fall as we talk about this team. A lot of y'all rock with the fellas in the spring and summer months as we talk the recruiting trail as well. It's something I love talking about. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Amari Clemons. And again, one of the things that I just feels like flies under the radar when we talk about these kids coming out of high school is the actual football players they are. I feel like so many times when we talk about the high school recruiting trail, we just talk about 100-meter dash times, length, measurables, what it says on the scale. And look, all that stuff is really important. And there's a reason we value that stuff when we're talking about these high school kids. Sometimes you just got to turn on the film and look at what they are as football players. Amari Clem's a damn good one. I mean, you cannot argue with 1,800 rushing yards, 12 and a half yards per carry, 34 touchdowns. Really hard to argue with those numbers. And you get into some of the film, and again, I think it's just so solid. And you turn it on. I think the first thing that pops up to my mind is that when he has the chance to hit the home run, very rarely gets caught from behind. And you see some nice change of direction. I don't think it's elite by any means, but he is very fluid in terms of making people miss. And when it is time to kind of punch the gas pedal, so to speak, he's separating. He's running away from defensive backs. So that long speed, that home run ability, it's certainly there when you turn on the film. Another thing you're going to see is the contact balance. I mean, he doesn't go down after first contact, which is something that's really important. Giving yourself opportunity to really get into space and get to the second level, you have to be able to break some tackles at the line of scrimmage. He certainly can do so. catches the football all right. I believe he had 14 catches during his junior year, and it looks pretty smooth, which is it's not necessarily the first thing we look at when we're evaluating running backs, but when you have running backs that are comfortable coming out of the backfield or splitting out wide and being dangerous as pass catchers, it just kind of increases the tool bag you have for Gus Malzahn in terms of how he wants to use this personnel. Continue to work through the film. And again, you see one contact balance. He has a nasty stiff arm, which you certainly notice, and just runs away from guys. Again, nice change of direction, the ability to hit the home run play. There's you kind of work through the film and you say what's wrong with him. What are the things that he needs to clean up in a big way, because there really ain't that many. And again, that it sounds not flashy to say. It's fun to talk about a 10-7, the 100-meter dash. It's fun to talk about 220-pound running backs. Want to know what's really fun and helps you win football games? Having running backs that are just complete and that can do a lot of good things. And that's kind of what Amari Clemons brings. Yeah, I love the long speed. I don't have any track times to back it up, but he pulls away from defensive backs consistently on the film. The speed is certainly not a question with Amari Clemons. And you take a look at Florida State in the 2026 class, and this is really, at least in my opinion, what is going to make or break Mike Norvell in his tenure at Florida State, how well he can build that pipeline from high school talent to this Florida State program. Look, I know Mike Norvell can coach. I know that he can create a really, really good culture. We've seen that from Mike Norvell. What really resulted in the bottom kind of falling out in 2024 is just that disconnect where if you miss in the transfer portal, do you have the high school talent to make up for it? Florida State clearly didn't. And it was sneaky a problem that we all ignored because Florida State was winning football games in 2023. But you always looked at the high school recruiting class and said, look, is this sustainable? And evidently it wasn't. And I think Mike Norvell realized that. Hey, we're putting a lot of emphasis in terms of building that pipeline at the high school ranks. Florida State finished much better than a lot of people expected in the 2025 class, potentially could even finish a little bit more. And then you look at a sneak peek of the 2026 class, and look, Florida State just came off of the worst season you'll see Florida State have under Mike Norvell. I would bet my bottom dollar on that. There still seems to be some momentum on the recruiting trail. And can this new staff maximize this program? That's what we're going to be looking for over the next couple of weeks and months. And it seems like that's what we're seeing early on in this 2026 class. We'll see how it plays out. Another big time commitment for Florida State. I'm sure we got a lot of commitments to break down over the next couple of weeks and months. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.